Dr. Shah is president of the TUSD board, and he's going to be speaking also about bonding election. So he is proud TUSD parent with 3 young children enrolled in TUSD and a product of public education. Before being elected to the TUSD governing board in 2020, he served as a member of the TUSD audit committee and family life curriculum committee, and is treasurer of his oldest daughter's school PTO. Dr. Ravi is a family physician and currently sees patients of all ages and walks of life at El Rio. Well, Dr. Shah, great to have you and welcome aboard.
Well, thank you, Joe, and thank you for the invitation and for having me this afternoon. So great to see so many familiar faces on the Zoom here today. Hope everyone is doing okay.
Well, you have the floor, sir.
Great. So I was hoping to start off just talking about the bond. I know that our district, along with some other districts, have bond or override elections during this ballot coming up in just a few weeks. And then turning from there to maybe answer any questions that people have about our schools. But I can kind of give an update a little bit about what's going on with TUSD. A lot of good things are happening. Obviously, there's challenges. One of the biggest challenges is the budget. We know from the budget package that the governor and state legislator passed back this spring, there was some one-time increases of funding for our schools, but no permanent sources of increase. We're really concerned that the ESA vouchers, the empowerment, whatever vouchers that exist, are funneling almost $1 billion away from our budget into private schools. And we see that TUSD itself we're only down about 150 students compared to last year, which is this general attrition and other things that we expect. And so we don't think that the ESA vouchers are really empowering families from leaving TUSD and going to private schools, but instead are being used for families that are already selecting private schools and just subsidizing the cost of private schools. So that's a big issue in the budget coming into next year. But we haven't gotten a lot of good sources of funding that are permanent for our district. We still rank one of the lowest in the country in terms of state per pupil funding, which is really challenging as costs are increasing as we're trying to compete for staff from the industry. And so trying to figure out how to pay our staff wages that are competitive. We also have the fiscal cliff coming next year of ESSER funding. So ESSER is COVID relief money. And we received about $250 million over 3 years of money from the federal government. And that was used, some of it for outdoor learning spaces and some structures there. But most of it was used for learning loss, whether it was summer school, making sure we had summer school available for any student, any family that wanted to get summer school and free of cost to anybody. A lot of positions, pull-out reading interventionists, math interventionists, coordinators in our schools to really work with some of the most struggling students, positions that worked with our teachers to make sure they had the skills and experience and expertise to be more effective in their classroom management and their working with students, especially those that were struggling. So a lot of these positions were funded by ESSER, the COVID relief money, and we've seen the gains. So we had a lot of growth amongst our students, and because of the growth, 90% of TUSD schools in the last school year were rated A, B, or C, which is huge. You know, there's a narrative that I know that exists of TUSD being a failing district, but the data doesn't support that. We have almost 90% of our schools rated A, B, and C, and a record number of A and B schools doing even better than before the pandemic in terms of the ratings of our schools. And obviously, test scores isn't the only way that we're trying to measure success. But that's one way that I know that a lot of people in the public and the test scores and the school ratings that people like to measure success. So we're looking at other sources of funding, our DSEG funding that we have. And many of you know that last year in the summer, we were out of court supervision for the first time after 45 years of the desegregation case, which means that we're still working to address disparities. but the decision making happens with our board, not with special masters from the East Coast or courts. And so, being that we're out of the DSEG agreement or DSEG court order now, there's still appeals going on, so we're not over it finally, but we're able to make some decisions and use some of the money that we think is going to be more effective to support some of those ESSER funded positions in the future, so we can keep on the learning loss and keep supporting students that need it. In terms of the capital funding and the bond, so we are down about $160 million of state support for capital since the 2007, 2008 recession, and that's never been repleted. We also know that we have about 8 to 9 million square feet of space in TUSD, 88 campuses plus administrative buildings. And the average age of our schools is over 55 years old. So their schools are old. We have some newer schools, but we have some schools that are over 100 years old and all the way in between. And what this bond package is trying to do is trying to help upgrade our facilities, both in terms of general facilities upgrades as well as safety and security upgrades. And so the number is large, $480 million, but we have 88 schools, and every single one of our school campuses will get upgraded facilities, about $3 to $4 million on average per school. So my kids go to 2 different TUSC schools. I have twins in kindergarten at Lineweaver, and I have my oldest who started middle school at Alice Vale Middle School. And so when I'm there at my kids' schools, when you're visiting school, I know some of you work in our schools already. When I do school visits and see the sites, you see firsthand just some of the issues our schools are facing. The bathrooms aren't working, floors are cracking, HVAC systems are dysfunctional. Some of the rooms are extremely warm. So our hope is that if the bond were to pass, we're able to get upgraded facilities, new flooring, new bathrooms, new HVAC systems, new plumbing systems, just some basic. This isn't pie in the sky, but this is some basic upgraded facilities for all of our 88 campuses throughout TUSD. Part of the bond money will be used for learning spaces, so new science labs, new technology labs, new engineering labs, technology labs, all these things that make us competitive for the next generation of learners that we need to make sure we have the workforce we need to be successful and competitive as a region. And then also safety and security is a big piece of it. I think 60 some odd million dollars of our bond package is going to safety and security upgrades. So this includes fencing and gates so that we have the proper perimeter fencing to keep out people that shouldn't be in our campuses, that we can update the windows with films. So there's special films that we can use in our windows that make them shatter resistant. So many of you saw the school shooting that happened in Tennessee at the private school, and how the person who did that just shot through the windows and entered in through that way. And so the film helps protect the window so that if it shatters, it'll shatter internally and it won't be as easy just to break apart and someone to enter our schools. New door locks, new security cameras, and other safety and security upgrades in our schools. So that's a bulk of the bond package. A small piece will go towards transportation. We have some of our vehicles are from the 90s and just been, almost kind of Frankenstein, putting them together and keeping them functioning. And so we're hoping to upgrade some of our transportation infrastructure, maybe even look into more of a greener fleet and some electric vehicles. And then finally, technology, making sure that we can continue a 1-to-1 ratio for our students to have technology and make sure we update our IT infrastructure. So that's the bond package in a nutshell, and what we're hoping to accomplish with that. And I'll stop for a moment to see if there's any questions about anything I've spoken about so far.
Yeah, Dr. Shaw, can you give us an estimate of about how much an average or median price home's taxes would go up as a result of the bond?
Right, it was, I think, $62 per 100,000 valuation, if I remember this, and pardon me if I'm a little off on the numbers, about 60 something dollars per $100,000 valuation on the home. So the average home is, I believe, 180,000 in valuation from the county property tax. And so we're looking at just about an annual expense of under about $120 per average homeowner in Tucson. And so for that investment, we can upgrade every single school and facility in TUSD.
Dr. Shaw, I work as a volunteer coach over at Monso, and I love Monso. They have a great ecology program, Will any of those monies go to help other schools with their ecology and environmental programs?
I don't think the bond money is going towards any programming per se, or just none of it goes to staff funds, none of it goes to salaries, it all goes to capital improvements in our schools. So there is some leeway for each school on how they use some of the money, and I think it's all based on a tier system of what some kind of high needs issues are. Now, I think, trying to figure out ways to expand the school gardens program that Monzo has is a really, I think, huge win for our district. And I know we're working with Moses and other folks at the U of A that have been really involved with the school garden program to find ways to really expand that throughout our entire district. And I was part of a committee that was working on touring some of the sites at Monzo, at Oyama, and some of the other facilities that have school gardens, and figuring out, what is the evidence to showing that improved outcomes for our students and I think that evidence is there. And so we're looking to, look at regular M&O funding and regular capital funding to make sure that every school can have a community garden. And there's other questions, I can get to later about, non-bond related issues about what you want to hear about the district. I'm happy to talk about, other things going on in the district as well. So.
Good,
Well,
Greg.
Greg, you have a question.
Yeah, is any of this bond money going to go toward Camp Cooper?
Yes, there is some. I think Camp Cooper is one of the school facilities that is in the bond itself. And so it's actually going to be on our agenda on October 17th to use some funding that they received from donations, as well as some plant funds to upgrade bathrooms and other facilities there at Camp Cooper. But we're hoping that if the bond were to pass, we'll be able to get some funding for Camp Cooper as well to upgrade some facilities. We want to have some more permanent structures and other things so that we can have more overnights for our students to get more of that ecology, as Susie mentioned, the ecology and other experiences at that really great site. And then also our hope is to potentially use the Milagro site. We also have another TUSD property in Northwest Tucson that I was able to tour this summer right next to the Milagro housing community that's really big on sustainability and water harvesting and other things. And I'd love to be able to create a second site for outdoor learning for our students over there as well. So a lot of potential out there. And I guess a lot of it has to do with, whether we have the funding to be able to update these sites and do good work for our students.
Okay, we have a question from Andrea Kennedy.
Hi, Dr. Shaw. Thanks for coming. And I wondered if you had any thoughts on this bond issue will pass or not.
Well, I'm confident it's going to pass, but not without everyone's work on this issue. And I'll talk about that in just a moment. So before we decided to go out for a bond, we hired a consultant back in January. We formed a committee made up of stakeholders and leaders in our community. We really investigated this over the course of the winter and spring before we came to our vote in June to approve going out to the voters for the bond. The consultant, did some polling, and some of you may have gotten either text or email or voice call polling to look into kind of attitudes towards a district as well as towards a bond itself. And the polling showed about a 60% pass rate for the bond. So we're hoping that all we need is 50% plus one voter to say yes on the bond. And there isn't any organized opposition to the bond. We've been able to really align the unions as well as the business community. We have the support of the Southern Arizona Leadership Council, the Tucson Metro Chamber endorsed a bond, the real estate organization here endorsed a bond. So everyone, I think, is coming together for the first time, recognizing how our community needs functioning public education to succeed. So I hope that's going to be enough to really sway the public to get us to that 50+1 threshold to pass this bond this year. But I'm going to turn it back to this group. And one reason I'm here today is to make sure that all of you know about the bond, but to activate all of you as well. We need everyone out there talking to all of your colleagues and friends and your neighbors about the bond. If you have a neighborhood association meeting in the next couple of weeks, or even a listserv, just talking up the bond as well, and that talking about how important it is for the community. All 88 schools are going to get millions of dollars worth of upgrades and upgraded facilities if this bond passes. So your neighborhood school down the streets in your community is going to as well. The bond is working with Mayor Romero's reelection campaign. So every Wednesday and Saturday, We're going out with mayor and city council to advocate for their reelection, as well as advocating for the bond. So if you can join us for one of those canvases Wednesday evenings or Saturday mornings, please come out. If you can't do it then, please just contact me. We'll get you in touch with the bond committee that has materials. We can get turf. We can get you some materials. We have thousands of flyers and signs and other things. So we just need your help to make sure that every voter in this low turnout election, as we're going to have in a couple of weeks, knows why we're doing this and how important it is for our community to succeed. And once our schools and public education, gets the investment that it needs.
Okay, we have a question from Steve Linder.
Hi, Ravi. It's great to see you. My question is non-bond related. So would you rather talk more about TUSD or take the...
I'll take Joe's lead about this, whatever you want to do, Joe. And while you're thinking, I'm going to put some contact information into the chat as well. So for bond related things, I can't use my official TUSD email address. I will give my TUSD email address for non-bond related questions or concerns that anybody has about the district or want to reach out to me. But for bond related things, I'll use my campaign email address, because I can't use any official TUSD resources to promote the bond. So I'll put two email addresses on my chat as well as my phone number. So please feel free to reach out to me on anything related to the district or public education.
Well, that'd be great.
Okay, so should you want to take my question now for non-bond related stuff?
Joe, do you want to just kind of move around to kind of a hodgepodge of things, or stick with one issue first?
Well, it's up to you.
You go for it.
Okay, just by the way, Lucy wanted to be here today, but she had some family issues, so she couldn't come. My question is, you've seen what's going on at Catalina Foothills with this Moms for Liberty, a disruption of their meetings, and with our illustrious superintendent of public instruction in name only, Tom Horn, supporting them. Do you see this Moms for Liberty group affecting TUSD at all, or having an effect at all on our next year's elections or whatever? Are they going to put forward candidates?
Yeah, great question, Steve, and thank you for that. It depends on what happens next year, November in 2024. So right now, we have 4 out of the 5 TUSD governing board members are pretty progressive on most issues, and we do have one member of our TUSD governing board who is not, and that person literally tried to shut down every club and activity in TUSD. No more chess clubs, no gardening clubs, no after school, theater clubs or any kind of club and activity. Try to shut down every club and activity in TUSD just so we wouldn't have gay straight alliances. Because our lawyers said that we can't pick and choose what we have, or we have any kind of club and activity, anyone can form a club and activity. So he came to the board with a proposal to change our policies to shut down every club and activity in TUSD. Now we know how bad that is for students if that were to pass, and what that would mean. So many of our students get their livelihood and their meaning of their academic work is coming from, they go to school and they do their work, and then they really get the meaning from their activities. I was a chess club nerd. I have a chess trophy still in my home office from when I was a kid, and I was involved in mathletes and other kinds of activities, and I'd hate to see those go away for all of our students. My daughter was in choir. She was in the gardening club and line weaver. And so that's a horrible proposal. That's really bad for students. That's a culture wars coming to TUSD. And right now, he doesn't get a second for anything he does. That's coming from the right, which is good. But we have someone even worse than him running for the school board next year. So all 3 incumbents, myself included, are running for re-election next year. Myself, Natalie Luna Rose, and Sadie Shah are all running for re-election. And we've had 2 other candidates announced, and one of them, Stephanie Kirk, is even more right-wing and more Moms for Liberty than even Val Romero is on the board. And so I'm concerned that if she gets traction, and if one of us doesn't win a re-election and she gets elected, then he'll get a second for every crazy proposal out there. We're going to be spending valuable time that we're not talking about kids and teachers and staff, but instead talking about culture wars and arguing about those. And so Right now, we are firm against any of the culture wars, book banning, drag shows and gender stuff and other things that they try to bring and to our district. But it all depends. I can't speak to the future. It all depends on who gets reelected next year.
Okay, Mike Ryan has a question.
Yeah, thanks. So $480 million, it's a pretty big number. Can you give us an idea to place that in context? How long, over what period of time will these bonds run? How long will it take to pay them off? And like how much is that per student? And will there be are there existing bonds outstanding that are still being paid off? How much debt load does TUSD have from previous bondings?
Right. So there's only there's very little left from the bond that passed 20 years ago, and that's going to be finished in the next couple of years. I don't have exactly the numbers in front of me, unfortunately. I apologize for that. But one thing you can do is Google TUSD bond. The district has an official website for the bond, just with information about the bond. And in the top, towards the top of that website, there is a PDF that you can download, and that gives a site-by-site breakdown. Every 88 school has a breakdown in terms of what they would get from the bond. And so it sounds like a lot of money, $480 million, but if you divide that up by 88 campuses, we're really talking about, $2 or $3 million for some of the smaller elementary schools. Some of the larger, high schools will get, $5 or $6 or $7 million worth of upgrades. And that money gets eaten up fast. If any of you have done a home renovation, you know how quickly the budget, just to do a kitchen renovation, let alone bathrooms and everything else, how quickly the numbers go up in terms of the cost to renovate anything. And so, getting a multi-stall bathroom renovated, you were talking about, hundreds of thousands of dollars. And if you get a flooring redone in the school or HVAC, these HVAC systems cost hundreds of thousands of dollars themselves, if not more for the larger ones and some of our bigger school sites. And so we're looking about, again, $2 to $3 million, maybe $4 million for elementary schools that are smaller, about $6-7 million for some of our larger high schools. And that's where we get to about $480 million for the bond proposal.
So I'm hearing you say it's been about 20 years since we've had a capital bond in TUSD. So you expect that these renovations will run, or will do us good for the next generation, for the next 20 years or so?
Yeah, this will upgrade every single school in our district, so it'll do us good for a generation, for sure, in terms of just like basic capital infrastructure for what we need right now. To some of your other parts of your question, I think the way the staff has put everything out in terms of what the needs are, they've tiered everything, and part of it came from when we were figuring out how to use ESSER funding. They went through all of our capital, all of our systems and everything, and just kind of put everything in this one. If it doesn't get fixed, it's going to break down, and we're going to have even higher costs to some of these things, and they tiered everything. And so when we go live, if the bond were to pass, first of all, just so the team knows, if anybody asks, one of the things that we included in our vote in June when we approved going to the voters for the bond was also creating a bond oversight committee. So if the bond were to pass this fall, we'll create a citizen-run bond oversight committee that reports directly to the board of directors to make sure that all the funds are being used as promised to the voters. And we have a certain amount of years, I think 10 years to use all the money. And I think they have like a 5 or 6 year plan. And of course, there's delays and other things that happen with working with contractors. But our hope is to have every year projects going live starting in 2024 if the bond were to get approved. I think maybe end of 24 into 25 once the money starts flowing and everything starts happening logistically. And then every year they'll have a cadre of projects to move forward in the tier structure to get every school the money out over time.
Excellent. Sounds well planned. Thank you.
Okay, Mike, any other questions in the chat room?
Yeah, I was impressed by our staff. They did a really
good.
good job in terms of their proposal and really having a very well set out plan if this were to pass, what needs to happen first and second and third and down the road over the years. So I was really impressed by our staff leaders that came to us with this proposal over the spring.
Yeah, Jeannie.
Yeah, hi, Dr. Schull. I would like to know, actually, I think two questions. I'm just appalled that someone is actually trying to do away with the clubs and the activities for the students. Um, Number one, I'd like to know what the reason could possibly be. When I went to high school, I lived in Philadelphia, which was the third largest city in the country at the time. My high school was the largest Catholic high school in the world. And I was part of our marching unit, and there were over 200 kids in that unit. Does the person or the people wanting to get rid of the school activities, do they have any idea what's going to happen to those kids? I mean, this keeps kids off the streets. It gives
Mhm.
kids an added incentive to go to school. I just am appalled. So my questions are, what are the reasons, and do they have any idea what this is going to do to the students?
Well, the reason was so that we wouldn't have any gay straight alliances in our schools. They
That
wanted to
what?
get rid of any support for queer students. They, just despite the queer students, they were willing to get rid of every club and activity,
Oh
extracurricular
my
activity in
God.
our schools. And that was the reason. It came after um, the outcry over the Tucson High Drag Show, which is a student-led organization that wanted to express themselves, and we supported them. And 4 out of the board members, went to the drag show to show support for the students, including myself. This came after the Tucson High Queer Club sponsored that, and they realized from the legal advice that they couldn't. I mean, not that he would ever be able to do that with the board that we have, but their hope to shut down any gay straight alliances or queer related clubs, wouldn't fly legal muster. So they're like, just burn the whole house down and shut down every club and activity that's extracurricular, just despite the queer kids, and keep them from finding support and meeting. And that's what we're dealing with. I mean, that's the culture wars coming to the district. They don't care about consequences and outcomes of their hate and bigotry. They just want to be out there hurting everyone just despite a few kids.
Oh, that's just appalling. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, Susie, you have a question.
Yeah, Monzo is 83 years old. I just looked it up. And boy, walking uh to and from the classes, uh they keep it really neat and in working order. I'm not sure how they do that because it's so old, but um yeah, I was wondering uh a whole lot of things, and now they're uh losing the train of thought. But um as you've been on the board for a long time, and I'm so grateful for that. You bring a lot of expertise from so many areas that you're involved in. Do you foresee uh activities like up in the Catalina foothills coming to TUSD? I remember a few years ago before COVID, there were some cage rattling and, you know, not so nice people trying to disrupt. Do you see that coming back?
Well, to your first point, Susie, in terms of like the schools looking nice, I am amazed by our teachers and staff, all throughout our campuses, and our central staff as well. They do an amazing job with what we have, with the sites and facilities that we do have that might be 83 years old or even older, to make it seem like this doesn't look, day over 50 or so or whatever. But our teachers and staff do a really good job, with what we have to keep them clean and keep it, functional. But we know that they need help, and we hope that bond passes. I think, and I hope, and I think a lot of the moms, for Liberty or whatever you want to call them, and other Purple for Parents and other groups, have been focusing on districts where they can really intimidate folks. That they can go to the foothills or Marana or Vale and actually intimidate the boards there to make decisions that are not in the best interest of the students, but best interest of right-wing talking points. That's where they're focusing their energy. At all of our call to the audiences, we do have a handful of people that talk about LGBTQ issues or contraceptive management or book banning and other things. We do get that at our board meetings, but I haven't felt a really strong presence because I don't think our board is intimidatable right now with the members that we have. The four of us that do come from the progressive side of the aisle have been fighting these fights for so many years, if not decades. I came out in high school in the 90s, and I've been fighting on LGBTQ issues for 30 years. And as a physician, as a family physician, I've worked with underserved communities my entire career. I was the medical director of a high school-based health center back in Chicago before we moved here a decade ago. And so I've been working on health education and contraceptive needs for young people my entire career and advocating nationally on those issues as a family physician. So I know how to fight the fight and talk the talk and not be intimidated by those who come with nonsensical arguments. We talk about, people talk about parental rights, and they don't want parents to be able to have the right to choose two-way dual language for their students and other things. And so we call out the BS, and we don't let them intimidate us in TUSD. And I hope that the other school districts have the strength that we do to make sure we're fighting for what's actually best for our students and not just Fox News talking points.
Okay, Craig, you have a question.
Yes. Is any of this bond money going to go toward facilities, let's say, that are closed, like BRICTA?
Right, so BRICTA is not closed, actually, Craig. We actually have a preschool program there right now, which is great. And so I think that's also going to have some upgraded facilities if the bond were to pass. I don't believe we're looking to open up any of the closed schools with this. I don't think we have the population in Tucson and the change in population demographics to be able to do that. We are looking at some of our campuses that can help upgrade some of the portables. So a lot of our schools have portable facilities. Not like, they don't look like trailer vans, but they're not really movable per se, but they're portables that are outside the main buildings. And as a bond were to pass, many of the schools that have portables will be able to build new permanent structures instead of continue using the portables that aren't as attractive or aren't as effective for learning and education. So our hope is that we can remove some of the portables. Our hope is that we can create a new building on the Rincon University High School campus, because there's a big demand for more students there, and that's a growing campus there. And so that we're hoping to expand within the sites that we currently have, as opposed to reopen any of the schools that are no longer open. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, but then you brought up another topic. I know California had a system where they were using portable facilities that they could move around from school to school to go along with shifting populations. Is there any of that available?
Right, a lot of our they're portable. They're by name only in many ways. Like, once you put it somewhere, they are really hard to move somewhere else. It costs a lot of money and a lot of damage if you try to move it from one site to another. So they're called portable because they really are you can bring them in as kind of modular units that are developed outside. But once you have them somewhere, it is hard to move. But we do have a lot of campuses with portable units. Some campuses are portable units that aren't being used much, and some campuses that are using them all the time. And those that are using them all the time will hopefully be able to change out those portable units for a permanent structure to meet the demographic needs.
Thank you.
And then, Joe, there's a question that was in the chat. How can we help get rid of voucher programs? And I'll just say that the best way to get rid of voucher programs is to flip LD 17. That's the way to do it. We have a legislator that doesn't support public schools and are lying to the public about these voucher programs and what they're really doing. They're not empowering families. They're just subsidizing the costs of upper middle class and rich families that are already choosing private schools. And so really it's just it's a horrible program, and we need to flip LD 17 and that will be able to then remove this budget draining program from our schools.
Okay, Mike, any other questions in the chat room?
Yeah, I was just about to ask that one about vouchers, and a couple of follow-ons regarding the voucher program and the charter program. Can you explain for us, in your view, if any of these private and semi-private school programs have had and continue to have budget impacts on our public schools, especially as regards capital improvement projects that have necessitated bonding like this instead of the state funding capital improvements and capital maintenance?
Yeah, a great question. Really complicated, nuanced question, and as well, so it's hard to answer directly. I'll start by saying that I'm of the mindset that public funds should be used for public schools with public accountability. And that's what public funds are for public schools with public accountability meant for everyone. And what school choice really means is the school's choice to figure out which families they want to cherry pick from our public schools. It's not school choice. If you're a low-income parent with a child that's struggling, you're not going to be able to choose a school of your choice. It's going to be the school's choice on which parents and which families that they invite or keep in their schools. And we get a lot of students that come back to our schools after the 100th day enrollment when it doesn't count anymore for funding from our charters and from private schools because the schools have chosen who they want to keep in their schools. And so the whole argument about school choice is really a fallacy. It's really the school's choice, not family's choice in terms of where they go. So make sure we're talking the right language here in terms of what's really going on the ground. And obviously, having more competition, is good for us in some ways. It makes us, work harder to be the best for our community. But also, it distributes funding. When we have $1 billion of taxpayer money going to private school vouchers, the legislature is going to have to make some tough decisions next year on what they're going to be doing and where that money is coming from. And I hope it doesn't mean that our public schools are going to be shortchanged, which they have been for so many years. And these schools have no accountability, no public accountability. There's no letter grades for charters or private schools. There's no test score data. There's nothing that really comes out from any of our competitors. And so we have, our own data here as TUSD. And so again, public money for public schools with public accountability and public funds here.
Can you talk a little bit about the inequity of forcing local school districts to rely on bonding for capital improvements? Because some districts are better positioned financially to be able to undertake such responsibilities than some others.
Yeah, a lot of our districts around Southern Arizona are going towards bonds and overrides. I know Sunnyside has a bond and override going on right now, both a bond and an override, and Flowing Wells as an override that they're trying to get passed, and I believe Sahuarita as well. So there are a number of schools that are going to the voters, and a lot of it is because the state hasn't been funding public education in the way that we need to keep up with the cost and the needs of our students. And so, again, flipping the seats that we can flip and getting a Democratic legislature that's going to be able to work with our Democratic governor to truly fund public education in the way that we need to is a big priority, hopefully, for this group.
Okay, any other questions? Susie?
Is there any way that you see to get around Mr. Horn?
Well, there's a lot of legal challenges going on right now. So I know the attorney, we're blessed in our state to have a attorney general that's looking out for public schools, as well as the governor is looking out for our public schools. And so, when Mr. Horn comes out with, legal opinions about, two-way dual language, for example, and what the voter proposition from many decades ago actually means on the ground, versus, and then we have an attorney general opinion that contradicts that and says, like, no, the superintendent of public instruction doesn't actually have the right to dictate that. That's what the school board of the state does, and the school board of the state has already, the Arizona Department of Education has already ruled on this issue, supporting two-way dual language programs that we have in our schools. And we're actually going to bring that to our October 17th board meeting. And I think it's going to be earlier on in the board meeting. We're going to talk about our two-way dual language program. That one has increased enrollment because parents are choosing. We believe in parental rights and parental choice. Parents are choosing our two-way dual language program for their kids and their families. And we actually have some good data showing there's actually improved outcomes for those students as well. And so it's parents choosing this is better for students. We have better outcomes for students. And so, hopefully the data in fact will contradict a lot of what Tom Horn is doing, but more importantly, having the attorney general and governor using the power of their offices to make sure that we're countering some of the bad things that Mr. Horn is trying to do for our schools. Other issues that Mr. Horn has come out about, he's trying to limit of some funding instead of going towards counselors and social workers to help manage behavior. He wants more armed officers in our schools. And I'll be the first to admit, that's something an issue I've changed my opinion on over the years. And you mentioned how long I've been serving the governing board. I'm still in my third year. I haven't been on the board very long, so I got elected in 2020. And thanks to so many of you for your help on getting me across the finish line in 2020. But I've been on the school board now for 2.5 years, which feels like a lifetime in many ways. But it's been an honor and pleasure to serve in that capacity. But in my 2.5 years, in my first year in the governing board, I voted in favor of contracts with TPD and our county sheriff's office to have some armed officers in our schools. And since then, I saw more data. I saw more evidence about what they're doing in our schools and what this means nationwide in terms of having armed officers. And the truth of the matter is, we have a perception of doing right and that armed officers has improved outcomes and better if there's a school shooting or other issues. But when we look at school shootings for the last 30 years, having an armed officer didn't improve outcomes for the schools. There wasn't any decrease in number of deaths or number of bad outcomes. And other data shows that some of the harms they're doing in terms of affecting especially students of color and really, I work in a jail now, as I mentioned in El Rio, but my main job right now is the Pima County Jail. I'm the medical director here, and that student school to prison pipeline that we have. And so I've changed my opinion on this issue. I voted against armed officers that we funded armed SROs in our schools a year and a half ago when it came before us after the Uvalde shooting. And Tom Horn is trying to have money only available for armed officers. And so we're trying to fight to make sure we can have what actually is going to improve outcomes, more counselors and social workers, more work on restorative practices, more addressing some of the root causes of some of these bad behaviors is going to be really important. And I think I really am proud of our district board for not throwing money at issues, but really taking a slow approach to figure out how to best meet the needs of our students. So for example, this spring and this fall, or later on this summer, we received settlement agreements from Jewel and Altria. You might have heard about that in the media. And we were part of a class action lawsuit, well before my time on the board, that sued Jewel and Altria and other entities to help address some of the consequences of their vaping devices that really targeted young people in our community, in our country, and what that means in terms of harms on our campuses. And we received a settlement, and TUSD was one of the bellwether cases, which means that we were one of the, I think, 6 districts around the thousands around the country that were part of the class action lawsuit that did depositions and got everything ready for testimony and did all the research and background work to help really propel us to court action if we needed to. And so because of that, we received a higher amount of settlement funds. And after legal fees, we're going to be receiving about $9 million of settlement funds coming to our district. And so instead of just letting it go into the coffers, or instead of spending the money right away, the board was agreeable to create a committee of experts. We have addiction medicine specialists, we have public health experts, and other people in the field that are going to be working with our school leaders to make recommendations on how best to use that money to address mental health and addiction and prevention, so that we can help really this next generation of kids be more successful. And so there's a lot of work to be done, and I'm really glad to be working with a governing board that understands to turn to experts to bring a lot of great ideas to how we really address some of these issues in a more nuanced way.
Okay, Andrea Kennedy, you have a question.
I know you're not a lawyer, Dr. Shah, but I know there is at least one lawyer on this Zoom meeting. I was thinking as you were talking, would there be a way to somehow litigate that directing public money toward private schools somehow harms students in public schools, because we are seeing them being harmed? Some way to, it's like you mentioned this class action suit with the vaping. Is there some way, if and when we ever get a majority up the street, to address the problem that way and say, look, here's these laws that show this is what these public schools should have, and by diverting money toward private schools and homeschooling, also no standards, you're harming them. Is there is there some way to go to court and fight this, or has this been done already? Or I don't know. What do you think? What does anybody else think?
Would you like to turn over to the audience to if there is someone who knows this? But I know vouchers has been litigated, all up and down the country, and in some ways they've been voted, or the courts have ruled against in terms of vouchers, but a majority of the time they're ruling in favor of those vouchers. So I know a lot of the voucher programs have been litigated, and with this conservative court that we have, I don't think we're going to win any cases on vouchers, unfortunately. And so the job is really amongst us. We have the almost score of us that are here today to talk to every one of our neighbors and colleagues and friends about the harms that this is doing to our public schools, and how the $1 billion isn't going to give parents choice, but it's just going to parents who have already chosen private schools and just subsidizing their costs. And so it's incumbent upon us to really educate our neighbors and everyone around us so that we're making better decisions at the ballot box when we have the opportunity to do so.
Okay, Susie, you have a question.
Yeah, Dr. Shaw, you brought up the State Board of Education. I know our Dr. Trujillo and the Pima County supervisor are wonderful people and really work hard for the students and for education in our area. What kind of help? What is the State Board of Education like?
Well, I think the State Board of Education has been really, favorable to a lot of the work that we're doing. They've supported our two-way dual language programs. They're not necessarily just talking heads for Tom Horn, so that's good. And you're right, Susie. We are blessed with some great people here locally. Dustin Williams does great work, and on the county side is a Pima County Superintendent of Public Instruction. And then we are really lucky as a district to have Dr. Trujillo. He has been with us for his 7th year now, I believe. We just renewed his contract for last year. He's on a new contract now for another 3 years. And he's really committed to seeing this district succeed. And this is the longest serving superintendent we've had in decades. And one of the longest, I think, in the history of TUSD. And that continuity and that longevity, he gets to know the district. He gets to really build in not just what's going to be good for the district tomorrow, but what's good for the district for the next generation. And it's super important. I think we're the largest district in Arizona with a long-serving superintendent. And so we are kind of the leaders now in the state with having his skills and experience in TUSD for all these years. So we are definitely lucky to have him. And I'm hoping that, one day he'll be part of the State Board of Education as well, and can really represent Southern Arizona in that realm as well. So I hope that comes to fruition.
Hey, Susie, you have the last question.
Oh, no. I just want to thank you, Dr. Shaw. Ever since I met you, you have been such a strong advocate for what happens in our schools in Tucson. And I watch with glee when you show your kids and what they get to do in the schools. Of course, you are an exceptional parent as far as I'm concerned, because you get to expose your children to so many things. The clubs in school are going to be so important for kids who don't have the opportunities that I had as a child with middle class parents who traveled and exposed us to a lot. So those clubs are going to be so important. Anyway, thank you, and I'm glad you're at the jail. We need good health care in our prisons. So thank you for
Well,
so much for being here.
So well said, Susie, and thanks so much for coming today. Appreciate it, Dr. Rod.
I appreciate those
And,
kind of words, Susie. That really means a lot to me. And I really enjoy being on the school board. It's been one of the funnest things I get to do, and I think most meaningful things I get to do as well. I get to see the consequences of everything we do as a parent of our district, and a proud TUSD parent. I get to see what it means for my friends and colleagues and the classmates of my children. and really get that community impact that we are having. And this has been an amazing experience to be able to serve. I'm so glad that the voters gave me this opportunity to be able to serve these last 2.5 years, and I hope I get to continue to do so.
Well, we're so glad that you came today, and we wish you all the luck with the bond issue, and we're behind you 100%. I'd like to introduce Larry Bodine, who has a very special announcement.
Thanks, everyone. And again, my contact information is on there. I put it higher up. My phone number, feel free to text me or call me. For anything school related, feel free to just use my normal TUSD account. But for anything bond related, please don't use my TUSD account. Use my Dr. Ravi for TUSD account for anything bond related. But thank you, everyone. I really appreciate you.
Thank you, Dr. Ravi.
Hey, take her away, Larry.
All right. I just wanted to make sure that everybody on this meeting knew that they were invited to buy a ticket to come to the Kirsten Engel for Congress fundraiser. It's going to be on October 21, 4 to 6 p.m. We need to get Kirsten Engel elected. She is working for reproductive choice, strengthening Social Security and Medicare, protecting our water, and speeding transition to low-cost clean energy. And the incumbent Republican is opposed to all of those things. So we need to stand up for Kirsten Engel. So if you come to this event, it's going to be a Hawaiian party. We've invited the dancers from the premier Hawaiian dance studio in Tucson. Wear your Hawaiian shirt and come and have a lot of fun. I put the link in the chat, and I hope to see you all there. Tickets are selling fast.
Great, sounds exciting. So hope everyone has it on its calendar and spread the word. Oh, another great meeting of the Democrats of Greater Tucson. Have a great week, and we shall see you next Monday.